Hey everyone, in this video we're going to learn about histograms and dot plots. Starting off, the following frequency histogram shows the number of fish that people caught during a recent fishing charter. So we can see our horizontal axis is the number of fish, vertical is the frequency, and our data is represented by bars. Notice these bars are touching, which is the difference between a histogram and a bar graph. Bar graph, the bars are separated, and that's because a bar graph is really good for categorical data, like if you're surveying people on their favorite color, whereas a histogram is good for numeric data, in this case, the number of fish that people caught on this charter. How many people went on the fishing charter? So we have to total up each frequency. So the frequency of catching 0 fish, well, 8 people caught 0 fish. And then 6 people caught 1 fish, 10 caught 2, 4 caught 3, 2 caught 4, and 2 caught 5. So summing all these values up, we'd have 14, 24, 28, 32. So 32 people went on the fishing charter. How many people caught 2 fish? So if we go to the horizontal axis, we look at 2. The frequency is 10, so that means 10 people caught 2 fish on this charter. What is the median number of fish caught on the charter? So that's the middle, right? If we lined everyone up with the number of fish they caught, we're looking for the middle value. Well, if there are 32 people, the middle is going to happen between the 16th and the 17th person. So we need to figure out where those 2 people lie in our histogram. So if we start at 0, so we have 8, and we move to 1, we have 6, so we have 14 people so far. And then when we move to 2, 16 and 17 would be included here. And again, if we start at 0 and we work left to right, 8 people plus 6 is 14, so the 16th and the 17th person are in this bar. So that means the 16th person caught 2 fish, the 17th person caught 2 fish, and exactly in the middle then is 2. So the median number of fish caught on this charter is 2. What percent of people caught 4 fish? Round to the nearest percent. Okay, so percent is part over whole. So there were 2 people that caught 4 fish out of the 32 that went on the charter, and then times 100 to turn it into a percentage. We use our calculator here. So 2 divided by 32, hit enter, and then multiply that by 100. So we have 6.25, and it said round to the nearest percent, so that's approximately 6% of people on the charter caught 4 fish. What percent of people caught at least 1 fish? Round to the nearest percent. So at least 1 fish would be 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 based on our histogram. So we could either do that directly and add up the total of each frequency, or what we could say is there were 32 people on the boat, and we could subtract off the people that caught 0 fish. So that would be 8 people. So 32 minus 8 would be 24. So we actually figured out what we didn't want, which was the 0 fish, and took that away from the total. So now the percent of people that caught at least 1 fish, so that's 24 over 32 times 100. So here we can divide both of these by 8 to make it a little simpler. So we'd have 3 over 4 times 100, which we can actually do that without a calculator, and that's just going to be 75. So we don't need to round. 75% of people on the charter caught at least 1 fish. The following frequency histogram shows the number of students scoring in each grade range on the most recent statistics quiz. Okay, so we have another frequency histogram, just a new data set. In this case, it's quiz scores. So we'd see on the horizontal axis, we have the range of quiz scores, and they seem to be pretty good. 90 to 91, 92 to 93, and that continues on. On the vertical axis, we still have frequency. So how many students took the quiz? Again, we have to figure out how many scored in each grade range. Now in this particular histogram, you can notice that some of the bars wind up in the middle of two values of our scale. Well, because we're dealing with students, if it's in the middle, in this case, that would be 3. So 3 students scored from 90 to 91, 4 students scored in the next grade range, 8 students in the next, 5, and then 1. So summing these values up, 7 plus 8 is 15, plus 5 is 20, plus 1, we have 21 students who took the quiz. Now, how many students scored a 90 to 93 on the quiz? So now we're looking at a more specific grade range, in this case 90 to 93, right here. So we're just going to sum up those two frequencies. So in this case, that's 3 plus 4, which is 7. State which grade interval contains the median of the data set. So again, we're looking for the score of that middle student if we arrange them all. Now, we're not going to know the exact score. That's why we're giving the grade interval where it's going to fall. So 21 students. So we're looking for the score of the 11th student. So again, starting on the left, starting at 0. So first grade range, we have 3 students. And then 4. So we have 7 total. And then if we move to the next interval, if we add 4, we have 11, and they're in this range, 94 to 95. So the grade interval that contains the median, in this case, is 94 to 95. Now, it also happened to be the middle grade range. That's just by chance. It does not have to happen that the median is in the middle of the grade range. If the data was dispersed differently, maybe there was way more students who scored 90 to 91, well then maybe the median would have been 92 to 93. It's all based on the data. We were specifically looking for where that 11th student fell. Use the frequency histogram to create a cumulative frequency histogram to represent the data. So a cumulative frequency histogram, we're going to start to accumulate data. Right, so we're always going to add on to the previous bar in our histogram. Okay, so the best way to figure out what this would look like is to first create a table of values. So our first range was 90 to 91, and then cumulative frequency. So then our next range is going to be 90 to 93, and then 90 to 95, after that 90 to 97, and then 90 to 99. So we're accumulating data as we go. So in that first grade range, there was only 3 students. And then in the next grade range from 90 to 93, it's the sum of the first 2 bars now. So that's going to be 7. 90 to 95, now we add the next bar. So adding 8, that would take us to 15. Then we add the next bar. So that's 5, so that takes us to 20. And then the next bar is 1, so that takes us to 21. So notice in a cumulative frequency histogram, our bars will always be going up or staying the same. They'll never go back down, like in a histogram, a frequency histogram. Okay, so here we have space to create our cumulative frequency histogram. So I'm going to use the line tool. So first, 90 to 91, we're going to 3. Okay, so there we have our first bar, nice and neat. Then we're going to 7. Don't want to move the graph, just want to use my lines. And then we have 15. Going all the way up. So we just want to make sure we're nice and neat with this. And then we're going up to 20. And then that last piece up to 21. So the lines aren't perfectly straight, but we have a nice visualization. Now I like to usually shade in the bars just so it's a little bit easier to read. We don't have to get crazy coloring them solid. Just a nice little shading so that we can visually see. Now, what's the advantage of a cumulative frequency histogram? First, look at that last bar. That's how many total students took the quiz. So it's really easy to figure out the answer to that question of how many people took the quiz or how many people were on the fishing charter. We can also compare the jumps in ranges, right? So I can see going from 1993 to 1995 was a big jump. So that means there was quite a few students who scored in that 94 to 95 range. Now, we could see that here as well. It's just a different way to represent that data. And again, in a cumulative frequency histogram, your bars will always stay the same or go up. They should never be going back down because you're accumulating data as you go. The following cumulative frequency histogram shows the ages of people at an amusement park. So here on the horizontal axis, we see the age range, 0 to 9, 0 to 19. And I want to point this out because even if they didn't tell us it was a cumulative frequency histogram, we should know it just by looking at the age ranges. They all start with 0. So we're just making the age range larger and larger as we move left to right. That's the idea of a cumulative frequency histogram. On the vertical axis, we have our frequency. So how many people were at the amusement park? So if we look at that last bar, 0 to 59, go all the way up. So 60 is the frequency there. So there are 60 people at the amusement park. How many people are younger than 20 years old? So we just have to go 0 to 19. Look at the frequency of that range. So 35. So there are 35 people at the park. Let's make that a nicer 5. 35 people at the park. Not cooperating with me here. 35 people at the park who are younger than 20 years old. How many people are between 30 and 39 inclusive? So this gets a little more difficult when we're working with a cumulative frequency histogram. In order to answer this question, we have to figure out the difference between two consecutive bars. In this case, between 0 to 29 and 0 to 39. This increase right here is the amount of people that are between 30 and 39 inclusive. Right? So this is the 30 to 39 age range. So how much did it increase? It increased by 10. So how many people are in only that age range? There are only 10 people. Okay, so again, to answer a more specific question, we have to compare our bars in the histogram. What percent of people are between 40 and 49 inclusive? So in order to figure out a percentage, we first have to figure out how many people are in that age range. So comparing 0 to 39 with 0 to 49, we should notice there is no change. It did not go up at all. Well, what does that mean? That means that there are 0 people in this age range. So 0 people, and just to finish out the percent, right, out of the 60 people at the park times 100, don't need a calculator for this one, 0%. There are 0% of people that are between 40 to 49 inclusive. What percent of people are between 20 and 29 inclusive? Round to the nearest percent. So we're going to compare 0 to 29 with 0 to 19. So we're looking at the increase right there. So it's an increase of 5. So 5 people are in this age range out of the 60 at the park times 100. Use the calculator here. So 5 divided by 60 times 100. So that's 8.3 repeating. And they told us to round to the nearest percent, so that's about 8%. So about 8% of people at the amusement park are in this age range. So we can see that there are some advantages to a frequency histogram, and there are some advantages to a cumulative frequency histogram. We can answer a similar set of questions based off each one. It's just a matter of the work that goes into it. Create both a frequency and cumulative frequency histogram for the following data set, which is the 50-meter backstroke times in seconds. So we have a table here, and we're creating both a frequency and cumulative frequency histogram to compare side by side. Okay, so there are 5 time intervals, 10 boxes. So we'll go by 2, so we have nice sized bars in our representation. So we have 35 to 36, 37 to 38, 39 to 40, 41 to 42, 43 rather, to 44. So that is the time range. On the vertical axis, we're going to have our frequency. We're going to go by 1, so we don't need to label anything there. Again, I'll use my line tool so I have it nice and neat. So first time interval, frequency of 2. And then next 3. And then the next interval is 5. Next interval is 4, so all the way down. 4. And then the next interval is 1. Okay, so there's our frequency histogram. Again, we're going to shade in each bar just so we have an easier way to see it. Okay, so there we have it. Now we're going to do the cumulative frequency histogram. So again, by 2, so we have nice bars in our histogram. But now when we go to label that horizontal axis, cumulative, so every interval is going to start at 35. So we have 35 to 36, then we're going to go 35 to 38, then 35 to 40, then 35 to 42, and then 35 to 44. Again, these are time intervals. Vertical axis still going to be frequency. And now we're going to accumulate data as we go. So that first interval still has 2. Now when we go 35 to 38, we're adding the first 2 bars in the previous histogram together. So 2 plus 3, we're going up to 5. 3, 4, 5. And then we're adding the next bar, which is 5, so that takes us all the way up to 10. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Adding that next bar of 4 takes us up to 14. 11, 12, 13, 14. And then the last bar is 1, so it takes us all the way up to 15. So there we have our cumulative frequency histogram. I'll shade this one with purple. And again, notice, in a cumulative frequency histogram, our bar should always be going up or staying the same. And it's good to see them side by side so we see their similarities, right? Still using bars, touching, okay, still breaking up the intervals based on time, and their differences. Here, we're isolating each time interval. Here, we're accumulating data as we go. So that covers histograms. The last thing we need to talk about in this video are dot plots, and they're exactly what they sound like. It is a representation of the data where we use a dot to represent each data point. So the following dot plot represents the age of baseball players signed up for a week of baseball camp. We can see on the horizontal axes, we have 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Those are the ages. And then we have a dot to represent each player. So how many total baseball players are signed up? We have to count the number of dots. So we have 5 dots on 7. So there are 5 players that are 7 years old. And then we have 7 dots at 8, 6 dots at 9, 4 dots at 10, 2 dots at 11, 1 dot at 12. So summing these values up, we'd have 12, 18, 22, 24, 25. So there are 25 total players signed up for a week of baseball camp. Determine the median of the data set. So if we have 25 players, we're looking for the 13th player's age, right? The player right in the middle. So instead of listing out all these values from least to greatest, we can just use the dot plot to figure that out. We'll start at 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So the 13th player is 9 years old. So the median of the data set is 9. And again, if we were to list all these values out, represented by each dot, from least to greatest, the middle value of the data set would be 9. What is the range of values in the data set? So that's the difference of the maximum and minimum values. So in this case, the maximum age is 12, minus the minimum age, which is 7. So the range of values here is 5. Right? There are 5 years between the lowest and the highest ages. What is the mean of the data set? Again, mean is just another word for average. So we have to find the average of all of the data. So to find the average, we add up all the ages and divide by the total number of players. Now instead of writing 7 plus 7 plus 7, that would take a while. So we'll just say 7 has 5 players, so 7 times 5. 8 has 7 players, so 8 times 7. 9 has 6 players, so 9 times 6. 10 has 4 players, so 10 times 4. 11 has 2 players, and 12 has 1. And we're dividing that by the total number of players, which we figured out was 25. Now, to help us out here, let's go to the calculator. So we're going to do 7 times 5 plus 8 times 7 plus 9 times 6 plus 10 times 4 plus 11 times 2 plus 12 times 1. We're going to hit enter. So the sum of the numerator is 219, and then we're going to divide that by 25. So on our calculator, we can just hit divide, and that'll take that answer. Divide by 25, hit enter. 8.76. So the mean or the average age of the baseball players is 8.76 years old. What is the mode of the data set? So that's just the data that is repeated the most. So if we look at our dot plot, 8 is the data point that is repeated the most, so the mode is 8. How many baseball players are at most 8 years old? Okay, so at most 8 years old, so they could be 7 or they could be 8. So we have 5 players that are 7, and we have 7 players that are 8. So we have 12 players that are at most 8 years old in this data set. Construct the dot plot for the following data set. Determine the mean, median, mode, and range. So our data set is the number of questions correct on a 5-question quiz. So we'll start by creating our dot plot. So you could get 0 questions right, 1 question right, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Now we'll use the data set they gave us, and we'll put a dot at each data point. So we'll start with a dot at 5, then a dot at 3, 4, 1, 4, 4, 5, 2, 1, 2. Now, if you want, you can lightly cross them out as you mark them down, so you make sure you don't miss any. Okay, so there is our dot plot. We have 10 data points, 10 dots, and they're distributed as follows. So we'll start with the mean. Let's get a different color. So the mean, the average. So again, instead of writing 1 plus 1 plus 2 plus 2, at 1 we have 2 dots. At 2 we have 2 dots. At 3 we have 1. At 4 we have 3. At 5 we have 2. And we have 10 total dots. Now this one I think we can do by hand. The numerator would be 2 plus 4 plus 3 plus 12 plus 10 divided by 10. So that's 6, 9, 21, 31 divided by 10. That's an easy division. That's going to be 3.1. So the mean or the average number of questions correct on this 5-question quiz is 3.1. Next, we'll do the median. So the median is the middle. We have 10 data points, so the middle is between the 5th and the 6th data point. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the median is right in the middle of those two data points, the one at 3 and one of them at 4. So the middle of those two values is 3.5. So the median is 3.5 questions correct. Next, we have the mode. So that's the most frequent number of questions correct. So looking at our dot plot, that is going to be 4. And then our range, that's the difference from the maximum and minimum data points. So in this case, the maximum is 5, the minimum is 1, so the range is 4. And that's nice because that means no one got a score of 0 on this quiz. All right, so we covered two types of histograms, frequency histogram and a cumulative frequency histogram, as well as dot plots. So now it's up to you to practice both interpreting the data when we're giving one of those three representations or creating your own, and then tie that together with finding the mean, median, mode, and range of a data set. Click the Amazon link down below for my algebra workbook so you can practice on your own. Give the video a like, and before you go, click that subscribe button so you can see more videos just like this. Thanks for watching.